Hello, everybody. This is Joseph Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium, and been a busy week for the Nefarium. But first, I want to mention something that is a bit of sad news that we have heard from Mr. Whitley Strieber, and that is a couple of nights ago, apparently his wife, Ann, died. She had been struggling for some time, and our hearts and prayers go out to the Strieber family and to Whitley. We know what a comfort your wife was to you. So, those of you who didn't know, I wanted to bring that to your attention. Send him a message or reassure him of your prayers. I know this is going to be a very hard time for him. Anyway, as I said, the Nefarium has been busy this week, and in this case, it's the Russian branch thereof. And lots of you sent me these two articles. These are really subtle articles. They're quiet, they sneak under the rug, but the implications here are so huge from what's coming out of Russia. And namely, what came out of that country last week was that Russian President Vladimir Putin had met with the Russian Central Bank President Elvira Nabiullina, and they held a meeting and they made several announcements, and these are so breathtaking, so sweeping. I think most of you are going to catch the implications immediately, and they're rather sweeping and they're rather profound. If you had any doubts that Russia means to defend its national and therefore its economic sovereignty from the West, have them no more because they are very, very serious about this. And the two articles that most of you sent me by far were the article that appeared in RT, and then another article some of you sent me from Russia Insider. These two are huge. So let me read to you, beginning with the RT version of this story. The story itself states Russia to issue 30 million national payment cards in 2016, and that's from the Central Bank of Russia head, close quote. Now, this meeting took place apparently on August 10th, so just 3 days ago, between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russian Central Bank President Elvira Nabiullina. And this is what RT is saying. Listen carefully. This is a card that works as a national payment card, and they're going to call it MIR. Okay, now I'm going to stop you right there and point that name out to you, MIR, like the space station. We'll get back to that in a minute. It's going to be called MIR in Russia, but at the same time, it can work abroad as a MasterCard, American Express, etc., so that people will feel comfortable and not worry if they want to buy something abroad or to travel somewhere. And that, incidentally, is a statement from Elvira Nabiullina. The first step was made when an operational and clearing center was set up. Domestic operations made using international payment systems are now processed in this center. So, in other words, Russia's internal and incidentally international payment center is now up and running. Now, this means, folks, that in addition to SWIFT in Belgium and in addition to CHIPS in the United States, Russia now has a payment center. So, in other words, the West now has extreme competition. And now I want to point out the meaning of the word mir in Russia. In Russian, mir stands for peace, and it also stands for the world. In other words, the globe. All right. So, in other words, by naming it mir, what I'm suggesting to you is that the Russians mean this to be a global competitor and a parallel system entirely out of the hands of the Western oligarchs. Folks, I cannot emphasize, if that reading of this is true, and if that's the thinking behind their naming it MIR, very cleverly standing for peace, P-E-A-C-E, and world, If that's the thinking behind it, this could be an extraordinary symbolism of what they intend. Now, continuing in the RT article, it says the Russian National Payment Card System announced the issuance of co-badging cards with the the JCB Bank of Japan, in July. The card will work, as Nabulina described, as a mirror card in Russia and a JCB card abroad. Now, that too is huge because Japan, if you'll notice what's being done on the Japanese end, is that this means Japan is going to act as an international clearinghouse for this Russian card. So Japan is going to be plugged into both the Western system of clearing and the Russian one. And while many people would suggest, and I think there's some plausible rationality behind that, while many people would suggest that this is Japan trying to act as the agent for the Western oligarchs to reintegrate Russia back into the Western clearing system and put them back under Western financial domination. I don't think so. I think this is another move by Japan, slowly and gradually prying the thumbs and fingers away, just like Mr. Abe's rearmament program, for an eventual and much more independent foreign policy and political course from the West than they have had previously. So this is huge development. Now, there's another article that lots of you sent me. This one from Russia Insider, and this contains some very interesting statements of its own, and I want you to listen so carefully because, again, these statements, folks, I cannot emphasize, are huge with significance. And this story is reported on the 11th of August, so this is just a couple days ago from Russia Insider. Go down the article to the following three paragraphs. Listen carefully. Quote, the first is that after a torrid period, this is talking about the news that Elvira Nabiullina told President Putin. The first is that after a torrid period caused by last year's ruble crash, Nabiullina has confirmed that Russia's banking sector has turned the corner by returning to profit in the second quarter. Now stop and think about that one right there. If that's true, that means they went through a boom, a bust, and now they're getting back to some fiscal soundness in a very quick period of time. All right? If that's true. It was probably in order to announce this that the meeting between Putin and Nabiullina was held. This is the strongest indicator yet of an improving economy. The 4.6% contraction in gross domestic product in the second quarter has inevitably produced some lurid headlines, but was in reality an entirely natural and inevitable one-off consequence of the sharp interest rate rise and of the inflation hike caused by last year's ruble crash. With interest rates and inflation coming down, and with the banks recapitalized, the stresses in the banking system that existed at the start of the year have apparently been overcome. Now, go to the end of this article and listen to those remarks in this context. The second thing that Nabiullina is reported to have told Mr. Putin is that Russia's new bank payment credit card, which she disclosed is to be called Mir, will be up and running next year, as will the new credit ratings agency that Russia is busy setting up. Though Nabiullina did not mention it, earlier reports said that Russia's new interbank payment system, which is being created to parallel SWIFT. Listen to that sentence again, that phrase again, which is being created to parallel SWIFT, is currently under test and should also be in operation next year. In other words, Russia will have an international payments clearing system operating in parallel, pardon me, to that of the West in Brussels, Belgium. Pardon me again. Folks, I cannot tell you how significant that is. because when plugged in to that Japanese, the JCB Bank, and its access to Asia, this is going to be, in my estimation, in a few years, within a couple of decades, this may be the major international Asia-based financial clearing system, and Russia's influence in it is going to be very significant. Folks, those of you in Berlin and Paris and London and New York and Washington, are you guys asleep at the switch? This is huge, folks. Now, let me continue with what Russia Insider concluded, the last two paragraphs. Taken together with the rapid, if forced, repayment of Western loans that is currently underway, what that means is that Russia's financial system is rapidly becoming independent of the U.S. financial system and its institutions. What that means in turn is that U.S. financial leverage over Russia is rapidly diminishing and may lose effectiveness entirely in a few years. In other words, what they just told you, what Russia Insider just told you, was go ahead and slap all the sanctions on us you wish. If we have our own international parallel clearing system and a domestic clearing system, which they already do, which is obvious, physically located in Russia, then this gives them an independence. Listen carefully, folks, to what I'm about to tell you. This gives them an independence on the international playing field that not even the Soviet Union had at the height of its power. So this is a game, folks, that very clearly the Russians are playing for keeps. And you'll notice that what is also happening, and this is, again, the insight that former Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Catherine Fitz, has also pointed out again and again. What they're doing, what the BRICS countries are doing, led by Russia, is they are creating redundancy in the systems of international finance and clearing. And that, in its turn, raises some rather interesting speculative questions. So, folks, like it or not, the West just now, I think, got some major competition on the international clearing field. This is a huge story. It's going to impact all of our lives if our politicians don't wake up from their slumber and look at the course they're on and evaluate a strategic change of course, I think would be necessary. Anyway, that's it. For news and views from the Nefarium this week, our hearts and prayers go out to Whitley Strieber and his children and his family at the loss of their wife and mother. And please, folks, send your thoughts and prayers his way. That's it for news and views. I'll see you on the flip side, everybody, and God bless.